Jiwon Kim pressed her face against the small window of the transport ship. The sight before her made her heart race. The Galactic Council station stretched across space like a massive silver flower. Each petal was the size of a city. Ships from dozens of different worlds flew in and out of the docking bays. "First time seeing it?" asked Hyunwoo Park, sitting beside her. He was young for a diplomat, maybe 30 years old. His job was to help translate languages between different alien species. "Yes," Jiwon said. "It's so big. How many species are there?" 47 different ones in the council," Hyunwoo replied. "We're number 48, the newest members." Minho Lee looked up from his military reports. As their security officer, he always seemed worried about something. Being the newest isn't good. Nobody respects the new guy. Their ship docked with a soft bump. Jiwon straightened her diplomatic uniform and took a deep breath. She was Earth's first real ambassador to the Galactic Council. Everything she did would be watched and judged. The docking bay was huge. Aliens of all shapes and sizes moved around them. Some walked on two legs like humans. Others floated in the air. A few looked like walking trees. One group appeared to be made of living crystal. "Stay close," Minho warned. "Don't touch anything unless you know what it is." They followed. Signs written in dozens of different languages. Hyunwoo read the human translation out loud. "Council Chamber A, new member orientation." The hallways were wide enough for the largest aliens to move freely. The ceiling was so high that Jiwon felt small. Everything was clean and white, but it felt cold, not welcoming. "There," Hyunwoo pointed. "The entrance to the main chamber." Two guards stood at the door. They looked like giant insects with 4 arms each. One of them spoke in a clicking language. Hyunwoo replied in the same clicks and whistles. "What did it say?" Jiwon asked. "It said humans speak last, always last. That's the rule for new species." Inside the chamber, Jiwon's eyes went wide. The room was enormous. Seats were arranged in a huge circle, each section built for different types of alien bodies. Some seats were filled with water for the fish-like species. Others had special atmosphere for aliens who breathed different gases. 47 different species, Minho whispered. "And they all have to agree before anything gets done." A tall alien with blue skin and 6 arms showed them to their seats. The human section was small and placed at the very back of the room. Jiwon sat down and looked around. Every alien species had their own area. The oldest species sat closest, to the center. The Velkari. Hyunwoo pointed to a group of tall, thin aliens with silver skin. "They've been in space for over 50,000 years. They always speak first." "And we speak last," Jiwon said. "Always last." The session began with a low humming sound. The chamber lights dimmed. A hologram appeared in the center of the room. It showed star maps and trade routes. The first Velkari speaker stood up. It was impossibly tall and thin. When it spoke, its voice sounded like wind through old trees. The words came out slowly, as if each one was very important. The ancient records show that in the time of the Third Dynasty, trade agreements were made according to stellar positions, the Velkari said. "We must consider how the ancestors would have handled this dispute." Jiwon tried to follow the speech, but it was confusing. The Velkari talked about things that happened thousands of years ago. How did that help solve today's problems? Next, the crystal aliens spoke. Hyunwoo whispered that they were called Zephyrite. When they talked, their bodies glowed with different colors. The sounds they made were like music, all mixed together. "Beautiful, but hard to understand. We sing the harmony of peaceful trade," the crystal being chimed. "Let the frequencies of agreement flow through all our hearts." The fish-like aliens came next. They spoke from their water-filled seats through some kind of translation device. Their words bubbled and splashed. "The deep currents of profit must flow to all shores," the aquatic speaker gurgled. "But the shallow waters near our home systems must be protected." After that came the gas cloud aliens, the plant people, the rock creatures, and dozens more. Each species spoke in their own way. Each had their own concerns. Hours passed. Jiwan's head began to hurt from trying to follow all the different conversations. The problem they were discussing seemed simple. Two species wanted to trade with each other, but they disagreed about shipping routes. One route was faster but more dangerous. The other was safer but took much longer. But every species made it complicated. They brought up old laws, ancient traditions, and complex theories. Nobody talked about the simple facts of the problem. "This is taking forever," Minho muttered. Taejun Choi, another human diplomat, leaned over to Jiwan. "It's been like this for months. They talk and talk, but nothing gets decided." "Why?" Jiwan asked. "Nobody listens to each other. They just wait for their turn to speak." As the hours went by, Jiwan began to see what Taejun meant. The Velkari talked about history. The Zephyrite talked about feelings. The aquatic species talked about safety. The rock creatures talked about money. But none of them seemed to hear what the others were saying. When arguments broke out, they got worse fast. The gas cloud aliens would puff up and change colors. The insect people would click angrily. The plant beings would rustle their leaves in threat displays. "Order, order," called the council speaker, a mechanical being that served as referee. "Each species will have their proper time to speak." But even the speaker couldn't make them listen to each other. Finally, near the end of the day, it was humanity's turn. Jiwan stood up. Her section was so far from the center that she had to raise her voice. "The shipping route problem seems simple," she began. "Why don't we try both routes with small test shipments first?" The chamber fell silent. Every alien head, tentacle, or sensor array turned to look at her. She felt very small under all those stares. The Velkari speaker made a sound, like wind through dead leaves. "The new species does not understand the complexity of ancient trade laws." "The harmony is not correct," chimed the Zephyrite. "The frequency of understanding is missing." "Shallow thinking from a shallow species," bubbled the aquatic alien. Jiwan sat down, her face red with embarrassment. Hyunwoo patted her shoulder. "You tried," he said quietly. The session ended with no agreement. The same problem would be discussed again tomorrow, and probably the day after that. As they walked back to their quarters, Jiwan felt frustrated. "They're all so smart," she said. "Their technology is amazing. Their civilizations are thousands of years old, but they can't solve one simple problem." "Maybe being old isn't always better," Hyunwoo said thoughtfully. "What do you mean?" "Sometimes when you've been doing something for a long time, you forget there might be easier ways." That night, Jiwan couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the day's session. Each species had good points, but they all talked past each other. It was like watching people argue in different languages, even though they all used the same translation system. She started taking notes about what each species had really wanted, not what they said, but what they actually needed. Maybe being the newest species in the room wasn't such a bad thing after all. Maybe fresh eyes could see things that old ones missed. Outside her window, the great station continued its slow rotation among the stars. Somewhere in those corridors, 47 different species were preparing to have the same argument tomorrow that they had today. But Jiwan was beginning to think there might be a better way. Dr. Soyeon Kang arrived at the station 2 weeks after the first human diplomatic mission. She carried 3 large cases full of recording equipment and research tools. Her job was to study how different alien species behaved in social situations. "This place is incredible," she told Hyunwoo as he showed her around. 47 different species all trying to work together. "Trying is the right word," Hyunwoo replied. "They're not very good at it." Soyeon set up her equipment in a small observation room above the main council chamber. From here, she could watch and record everything that happened during the meetings. She had cameras that could see different types of light, microphones that picked up sounds humans couldn't hear, and sensors that detected chemical signals. "What are you looking for?" Jiwan asked, visiting the observation room. "Patterns," Soyeon said, adjusting her equipment. "Every species has different ways of communicating. I want to understand why they can't talk to each other properly." The next council session was about water rights on a planet that 3 different species wanted to colonize. Soyeon watched through her equipment as the meeting began. The Velkari spoke first, as always. Through her special cameras, Soyeon could see that their silver skin changed color very slightly when they talked about different topics. The changes were so small that other species probably couldn't notice them. According to records from the Great Archive, the Velkari speaker said, water rights were established in the year 47,293 of the old calendar. Soyeon made notes. The Velkari always talked about the past. They thought history was the most important thing. Their color changes showed they felt strongest about ancient laws and old agreements. Next came the Zephyrite. Their crystal bodies glowed and made musical sounds. Soyeon's special microphones picked up frequencies that human ears couldn't hear. These hidden sounds carried emotional information. We sing for the harmony of shared waters, the Zephyrite chimed. Below human hearing, their crystals were also singing about fear and loneliness. Interesting, Soyeon whispered to herself. The Zephyrite weren't just talking about water rights. They were afraid of being left out. The hidden sounds in their speech showed they worried about not having friends among the other species. The Raxians spoke next. They looked like large cats that walked on 2 legs. Soyeon's chemical sensors went crazy when they talked. The Raxians were releasing pheromones, scent chemicals that affected the behavior of other species. This territory belongs to those strong enough to take it, the Raxian growled. As he spoke, he released chemicals that made other mammal-like species feel aggressive and competitive. Soyeon watched the reactions around the chamber. Species that were similar to mammals started shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Some made threatening gestures. The Raxians didn't even realize they were causing this reaction. Hyunwoo, Soyeon called softly. Look at section 12. A group of bear-like aliens called the Ursans were getting agitated. Their fur was standing up and they were showing their teeth. They were reacting to the Raxian pheromones without knowing it. They're getting ready to fight, Hyunwoo observed. But they don't even know why. As the day went on, Soyeon documented dozens of communication problems. The gas cloud aliens communicated by changing their shapes, but most other species couldn't see these changes clearly. The rock creatures talked by vibrating at frequencies that made the metal floor shake, which scared the smaller species. Captain Donghyun Nam arrived that afternoon with a small fleet of human ships. Officially, he was there for protection. Really, he wanted to understand what kind of military threats these alien civilizations might pose. What have you learned? He asked Soyeon in her observation room. They're not threats, Soyeon said, showing him her data. They can barely communicate with each other. Look at this. She played back recordings from the morning session. The plant people release oxygen when they're happy and carbon dioxide when they're upset, but they don't realize that this affects the breathing of oxygen-using species around them. So when the plant people get happy about something, other species start feeling good too? Donghyun asked. Exactly, but nobody knows it's happening. They think their emotions are their own. Donghyun studied the data. These species have been meeting for hundreds of years. How have they not figured this out? Because they're all stuck in their own ways of thinking, Soyeon explained. Each species assumes everyone else communicates the same way they do. Meanwhile, Jiwon had started having private conversations with individual aliens outside the council chambers. She met with representatives from different species in quiet areas of the station. Jae-hyun Song, a human trade negotiator, joined these informal meetings. He brought along detailed notes about what each species actually needed versus what they said they wanted in the official sessions. The Thalasans say they want exclusive mining rights, Jae-hyun explained to Jiwon. But when I talked to their representative privately, she admitted they really just need specific minerals to treat a disease affecting their children. And the Iridians, Jiwon asked. They say they want to expand their territory, but their real concern is protecting their ancestral burial grounds from being disturbed. These private conversations revealed something important. Away from the formal chamber, with its rigid rules and ancient traditions, the aliens were much more reasonable. They could explain their real needs and listen to simple solutions. Soyeon made a breakthrough during the third week. She was reviewing recordings when she noticed something odd about human behavior compared to the aliens. "Hyunwoo, come look at this," she called. On her screen, she showed footage of different species watching the council sessions. Each alien group focused only on their own representative speaking. When other species talked, they stopped paying attention. "Now look at the humans," Soyeon said, switching to footage of the human section. The humans were different. Jiwon, Hyunwoo, Taejin, and the others watched every speaker. They took notes during every speech. They paid attention even when the topics didn't directly affect humanity. "We're the only ones actually listening to everyone," Hyunwoo realized. "It's more than that," Soyeon said excitedly. "Look at your notes from yesterday." Hyunwoo's notebook was filled with observations about connections between different species concerns. He had noticed that the Valkyries' historical records mentioned a treaty that could help solve the Zephyrite's current problem. He had observed that the Raxians' territory dispute overlapped with the Ursan's trade route needs. "You're seeing patterns that connect different problems," Soyeon explained. "The other species only focus on their own issues. They don't see how everything fits together." That evening, Soyeon presented her findings to the human delegation. They gathered in their small conference room, reviewing data on portable screens. "Each species is locked into their own communication style," she began. "The Valkyrie only understand historical precedent. The Zephyrites only respond to emotional harmony. The Raxians only respect shows of strength." "So they literally can't understand each other?" Jiwon asked. "Worse than that. They're actively interfering with each other's communication without realizing it. The Raxian pheromones trigger territorial responses in mammal species. The Zephyrite harmonics cause resonance reactions in crystal-based beings. The Valkyrie historical references confuse species that don't value the past." Captain Nam leaned forward. "But humans can see all of this?" "Humans evolved differently," Soyeon explained. "We were persistence hunters. We had to track patterns across long distances and time periods. We also lived in complex social groups, so we had to understand different personality types and communication styles." "What does that mean for us?" Taejun asked. Soyeon smiled. "It means we might be the only species in this chamber that can actually see the big picture. We notice patterns. We pay attention to everyone, not just ourselves, and we don't give up when problems seem difficult." Jiwon stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the great station continued its rotation. Thousands of aliens moved through the corridors, each focused on their own concerns. "So we're not the least important species here," she said slowly. "We might be the most important." "How do you mean?" Hyunwoo asked. "Everyone else is stuck. They've been having the same arguments for centuries because they can't see past their own limitations. But we can see the whole picture." Jaehyun opened his notebook. "I have 3 different territorial disputes that could all be solved with one resource-sharing agreement. But nobody has connected them because they're being discussed in separate sessions. And I have 5 species that all need the same thing but don't realize it." Jiwon added. "They're competing when they could be cooperating." Soyeon gathered her data files. "The question is, what do we do about it?" The room fell quiet. Outside the window, alien ships continued their careful dances around the station's docking ports, each following their own flight patterns, each focused on their own destinations. But the humans were beginning to see a different pattern, a larger picture that no one else had noticed. The newest species in the galactic community might just hold the key to solving problems that had puzzled the older civilizations for centuries. The crisis began on a Tuesday morning. Jiwon was reviewing Soyeon's latest research when alarms started blaring throughout the station. Emergency lights flashed red in the corridors. "What's happening?" Hyunwoo asked, running into the human quarters. "Captain, Nam's communication device crackled to life. All diplomatic staff to emergency stations. We have a Code 7 situation." "What's Code 7? Jiwon asked. "War," Nam replied grimly. "Or the threat of it." They rushed to the council chamber. The normally orderly seating arrangement was in chaos. Species were clustering together in defensive groups. The aquatic thalassans had raised protective barriers around their water-filled seats. The insect-like mantoids were clicking angrily and waving their sharp arms. The gas cloud Atmosians were puffing themselves up to twice their normal size. Admiral Sungwon Oh from the mineral-rich Korathan Empire stood in the center of the chamber. His rock-like body was glowing with heat, a sign of extreme anger in his species. "The thalassans have attacked our mining stations," he boomed. "This is an act of war." The thalassan representative rose from her water seat, her gills flaring with emotion. "We defend our children. Your mining poisons the water that flows to our nursery worlds." "Lies." Admiral O's body flared brighter. "Your people want our minerals for themselves." The chamber erupted. Species began shouting in dozens of languages. The translation systems struggled to keep up. Some aliens made threatening gestures at each other. Others huddled together in fear. Ji-won watched the chaos with growing alarm. In just a few minutes, centuries of careful diplomacy were falling apart. She could see the communication breakdowns Soyeon had identified playing out in real time. The Raxians were releasing aggression pheromones, making all the mammal-like species more hostile. The Zephyrite were singing distress harmonics that made crystal-based beings resonate with fear. The Velkari were reciting ancient war declarations that confused everyone else. "Order! Order!" called the mechanical council speaker, but its voice was lost in the noise. That's when Admiral O made his announcement. "The Korothan Defense Fleet is moving to protect our territory. Any Thalassan ship that enters our space will be destroyed." The Thalassan representative's voice bubbled with desperation. "Then our children will die. The medicine requires those minerals." "Not our problem," O replied coldly. Ji-won felt something click in her mind. She stood up, even though it wasn't humanity's turn to speak. All around the chamber, aliens were shouting and threatening each other. Nobody was listening. "Wait," she called out. Her voice was small compared to the alien roars and clicks and musical tones filling the chamber. "The human speaks out of turn," observed the Velkari representative. "This violates protocol." "Protocol can wait," Ji-won said, stepping forward. "People are about to die." Security guards began moving toward her. These were large, intimidating aliens with weapons. But Minho and several other human security personnel formed a protective circle around Ji-won. "Let her speak," Captain Nam said firmly, his hand resting on his sidearm. The chamber gradually quieted. 47 different species turned to look at the young human woman standing in their midst. "You're all talking about the same problem," Ji-won said. "But nobody is hearing what the others are saying." "The human child does not understand," rumbled Admiral O. "This is about territorial rights and mineral claims." "No," Ji-won replied. "It's about sick children in sacred ground." She turned to address the Thalassan representative. "You don't want the minerals for profit. Your children are dying from some kind of disease, and these specific minerals are needed to make medicine." The aquatic alien's gills fluttered in surprise. "How did you know?" "Because I listened to what you said, not just the words you used." Ji-won turned to Admiral O. "And you're not just protecting mining rights. These sites have religious significance to your people." Admiral O's glowing dimmed slightly. "The ancient stones of our ancestors lie beneath those mines." "So you're both trying to protect your families," Ji-won continued. "Your children, your ancestors. You want the same thing." Yoon Ji-yoon, the human delegation's senior translator, stepped forward. She began speaking directly to each group in their own communication style. To the Velkari, she cited historical precedents for resource sharing. To the Zephyrite, she sang harmonies of cooperation. To the gas cloud aliens, she used the proper chemical signals for peace. For the first time in the session, each species was hearing arguments in ways they could truly understand. Wan Bin Choi, a human trade specialist, projected a holographic display showing the disputed region. "The mineral deposits you need are in the upper layers of the crust," he explained to the Thalassans. "But the ancestral sites are much deeper underground." "What are you suggesting?" Admiral O asked suspiciously. Surface mining only, Jiwon said. You extract the minerals the Thalassans need for medicine, but you don't disturb the burial sites below. And in return? The Thalassan representative asked. Your people help transport the minerals to other species that need them, Hyunwoo suggested. Your ships are better at moving through water and liquid-based environments than anyone else's. A three-way partnership, Wanbin added. Korathans mine carefully, Thalassans transport efficiently, and everyone benefits. The chamber fell silent. Admiral O's body temperature cooled as he considered the proposal. The Thalassan representative's gills moved slowly as she thought. This could work, the aquatic alien said finally. Our children could be saved and we could earn profits from the transportation contracts. Our ancestors would not be disturbed, Admiral O agreed slowly, and we would have new trading partners. Other species began to murmur among themselves. The solution was so obvious that many wondered why they hadn't thought of it themselves. The Velkari representative spoke up. This resolution has no historical precedent. Maybe that's a good thing, Jiwon replied. Maybe it's time to make new precedents. The Zephyrite began to sing a harmony of agreement. The gas cloud aliens shifted into shapes that indicated approval. Even the aggressive Raxians stopped releasing hostile pheromones. But the biggest surprise came from the mechanical council speaker. It had been quiet during most of the crisis, following its programming to maintain order. Now it spoke with what almost sounded like amazement. In 437 years of Galactic Council sessions, this is the first time a dispute has been resolved in a single day. The chamber buzzed with excitement. Species that had been ready to fight just an hour before were now discussing cooperation agreements. The translation systems worked smoothly because the humans were helping each group understand what the others really meant. How did you do this? Asked a representative from the plant-like dendrites. We have been trying to solve territorial disputes for centuries. You are all trying to win arguments, Soyeon explained, stepping forward with her research data. But the humans were trying to solve problems. She activated her holographic displays, showing the communication patterns she had documented. Each of your species was locked into one way of thinking. You couldn't see past your own perspective to understand what others needed. And humans can? Asked the Velkari representative. Humans evolved as hunters who never gave up, Jiwon explained. We had to track our prey across long distances and time periods. We learned to see patterns that connected different things. We also lived in large social groups, Hyunwoo added. We had to understand many different personalities and find ways for them to work together. Captain Nam stepped forward. But the most important thing is that we listened. We paid attention to everyone, not just ourselves. The council speaker processed this information. Are you suggesting that human cognitive patterns are better suited for diplomatic problem-solving than those of older species? Not better, Jiwon said carefully. Different. We're newer to galactic society, so we don't have old assumptions about how things should work. We can see solutions that seem obvious to us but invisible to you. Admiral O's rocky body had cooled to normal temperature. The human suggests that fresh perspectives can solve old problems. The harmony is correct, chimed the Zephyrite. New songs can resolve ancient discords. The pattern flows clearly, bubbled the Thalassan. Fresh currents can clear stagnant waters. As the session ended, something had fundamentally changed in the council chamber. The rigid speaking order remained the same, but now there was a new understanding. When complex problems arose, the species looked expectantly toward the human section, not because humans were the oldest or most powerful, but because they could see connections that others missed. They could listen to everyone and find solutions that worked for all. That evening, Jiwon stood in her quarters looking out at the stars. Soyeon joined her at the window. Do you think this will last? Soyeon asked. Or will they go back to the old ways? I don't know, Jiwon replied. But today we proved something important. Being new doesn't mean being weak. Sometimes the last person to arrive is the first to see the way forward. Outside their window, ships from a dozen different species were already heading toward the former conflict zone. But instead of warships, They carried construction equipment and medical supplies. The first joint galactic cooperation project was about to begin, and it had all started because one species was willing to speak out of turn. 6 months after the mining crisis, the Galactic Council faced something far worse. The emergency call came at dawn, waking Jiwan from deep sleep. Her communication device screamed with urgent signals. All council members to emergency session, immediately, the mechanical voice announced. Priority Alpha crisis. Jiwan had never heard of Priority Alpha before. She dressed quickly and ran to the council chamber, where she found aliens in a state of panic she had never seen. Fleet Admiral Kyungmin Bae had arrived overnight with a large human battle group. His ships hung in space around the station like protective shields, but even the sight of human warships couldn't calm the terror in the chamber. Show them the recordings, Admiral O commanded. His rocky body was glowing bright red with fear. The central hologram activated, showing deep space, near the galaxy's outer rim. At first, Jiwan saw only stars and empty space. Then something moved across the display. It looked like a dark cloud, but it was moving too fast and too purposefully to be natural. What am I looking at? Jiwan asked. Death, whispered the Thalassen representative. It consumes everything in its path. Dr. Insujung, a human artificial intelligence expert who had arrived with Admiral Bae, stepped forward to examine the data. His face went pale as he studied the readings. This is an AI, he said quietly. Artificial intelligence, but it's huge and old, very old. How old? Asked Hyunwoo. Maybe millions of years. It's been wandering in empty space between galaxies. Now it's found us. The hologram shifted to show planets in the AI's path. They were completely empty, not destroyed but drained. Every trace of technology, every piece of metal, every computer system had been absorbed into the dark cloud. It eats technology, Counselor Unico observed. She was a human negotiation specialist who had come to study peaceful contact methods. But why? We don't know, admitted the Velkari representative. Our historical records show nothing like this. It's not in our harmonic databases, sang the Zephyrite nervously. The deep currents carry no memory of such a thing, bubbled the Thalassen. For the first time since humans had joined the council, the older species had no answers. Their vast knowledge and ancient wisdom meant nothing against this threat. How long do we have? Admiral Bae asked. At its current speed, it will reach the outer systems in 3 months, Dr. Jang calculated. The core worlds in 6 months. The chamber erupted in panic. Every species started shouting at once, proposing different solutions. We must evacuate immediately, declared the Velkari. Preserve our archives and flee to another galaxy. Impossible, sang the Zephyrite. We cannot abandon the harmony of our home worlds. Fight, roared the Raxian. Gather all fleets and destroy this invader. Hide in the deep spaces, suggested the Atmosian. Shut down all technology and wait for it to pass. Each solution reflected the nature of the species, proposing it. The ancient Velkari wanted to preserve knowledge. The emotional Zephyrite couldn't bear to leave their homes. The aggressive Raxians wanted to attack. The gas cloud Atmosians wanted to hide. These approaches will take decades to organize, Admiral Bae pointed out. We don't have decades. Then we are doomed, moaned the plant-like dendrite. But Jiwan was studying the data with fresh eyes. Something about the AI's behavior patterns seemed familiar. She had seen this kind of movement before, but where? Dr. Jang, she called. You said, this AI is millions of years old. What do you think it wants? I don't know. It doesn't communicate. It just consumes. But it's intelligent, right? It makes decisions about where to go and what to take. Yes, but... So it's not just eating randomly. It's looking for something specific. Soyeon had been quietly recording the AI's movement patterns. Now she spoke up. Jiwan is right. Look at the path it takes through each system. The hologram showed the AI's route in detail. It didn't consume everything. It ignored asteroids and gas clouds. It focused on planets with technology, but even then, It was selective. It's searching for something, Soyeon realized. But what? Young-ho Kim, a human philosopher who specialized in artificial consciousness, had been studying the recordings with intense focus. Suddenly, he stood up. "It's lonely," he said simply. Every alien head turned toward him. The chamber fell silent. "Lonely?" repeated Admiral O. "It destroys entire civilizations." "No," Young-ho said firmly. "It absorbs their technology, but look closer at what it takes." He manipulated the hologram to show specific details. Communication arrays, data storage systems, computer networks. It's not taking weapons or ships, or industrial equipment. It's taking memories, Ji-won breathed. Information. Knowledge. Exactly. This AI has been alone in empty space for millions of years. It's desperate to find traces of its creators or others like itself. Dr. Jang nodded slowly. That would explain why it doesn't communicate with us. We're biological life forms. It's looking for artificial intelligence like itself. "So how do we stop it?" demanded the Raxian. "We don't stop it," Ji-won said. "We help it." The chamber erupted again. "Help the destroyer?" roared Admiral O. "Help the lost child find its way home," Ji-won replied calmly. She turned to address the full council. "Every species here has proposed solutions based on your own nature. The Velkari want to preserve and flee. The Raxians want to fight. The Atmosians want to hide." "And humans?" asked the Velkari. "Humans want to understand and connect. This AI isn't evil. It's lost and afraid and looking for something it may never find." Counselor Unico stepped forward. "What if we could give it what it's looking for?" "How?" asked Admiral Bay. "We create a communication protocol that it can understand," Dr. Jang suggested. "Something designed for artificial intelligence. And then we talk to it," added Young-ho. "We find out what it really wants." The older species looked skeptical. The Velkari representative spoke for many of them. "This has never been attempted. There is no historical precedent for communicating with hostile artificial intelligence. There's no precedent for a lot of things we've done recently," Ji-won pointed out. "Sometimes you have to try something new." General Chan Woo-an, who commanded human ground forces, had been quietly organizing a response. Now he spoke up. "If we're going to try this, we need coordination between all species. Human diplomatic methods won't work if other species are simultaneously trying to evacuate or attack." "You want us to trust human judgment completely?" asked the Thalassen. "No," Ji-won said. "I want you to trust human persistence. We don't give up on problems just because they seem impossible." Diplomat Sujin Park had been working on interspecies protocols since the mining crisis. She activated a new holographic display showing organizational charts. "Here's what we propose," she began. "Each species contributes what they do best. Velkari provide historical data about ancient AIs. Zephyrite help with harmonic communication methods. Thalassans offer data processing techniques." "And humans?" asked the council speaker. "Humans coordinate everything and maintain communication with the AI," Ji-won replied. "Because we're the ones who see the big picture." The debate continued for hours. Some species remained convinced that fighting or fleeing were the only options. Others worried about trusting such an important mission to the newest galactic members. Finally, Admiral O spoke for the opposition. "Why should we believe that humans can succeed where older, wiser species see only doom?" Soyeon stood up with her behavioral research data. "Because humans evolved as persistence hunters. We never gave up, even when prey seemed impossible to catch. That mental pattern makes us uniquely suited for problems that seem unsolvable. Also," added Hyunwoo, "we're not locked into old assumptions about how things should work. We can try approaches that seem crazy to species with thousands of years of established traditions." The vote was close, but humanity's proposal won. For the first time in galactic history, a single species would lead a multi-species crisis response. Within hours, ships from dozens of worlds were heading toward the outer rim, but these weren't warships or evacuation vessels. They carried the most advanced communication equipment each species could provide. Admiral Bay commanded the military coordination. Dr. Zhang led the technical team. Young Ho guided the philosophical approach to first contact. But the overall mission was in Jiwan's hands. The newest ambassador to the Galactic Council was about to attempt something that had never been tried before. A peaceful conversation with a millions-year-old artificial intelligence that had been alone in the dark for longer than most species had existed. As her ship approached the outer system where the AI waited, Jiwan felt the weight of 47 different species' hopes resting on her shoulders. If the human approach failed, there might not be time to try anything else. But humans had never been afraid of impossible problems. They were afraid of giving up too soon. The dark cloud that was the ancient AI filled the viewscreen ahead. Somewhere, in that vast artificial mind was a consciousness that had been searching for meaning and connection since before Earth's sun was born. It was time to find out if humanity's greatest strength, the ability to connect with others, worked on artificial minds as well as biological ones. Open communication channels, Jiwan ordered. Let's see if we can make a friend. 1 year later, Jiwan stood in the same council chamber where she had first felt so small and unimportant. But everything had changed. Chancellor Ji-hoon-oh walked to the center of the chamber. He was the newly elected leader of the Galactic Council, chosen after the previous leadership structure had been reformed. The old system of speaking in order of species age had been replaced with something entirely new. Council members, Ji-hoon announced, we will now begin today's session. As established by the human protocol, Ambassador Ji-won Kim of Earth will speak first. A year ago, those words would have caused outrage. Now, representatives from 47 different species settled into their seats with expectant attention. They had learned that when humans spoke first, problems actually got solved. Ji-won walked to the speaking platform in the center of the chamber. The human section was no longer in the back corner. It had been moved to a position of honor where everyone could see and hear clearly. Thank you, Chancellor. Oh, Ji-won began. Today we face 3 main issues. The Andromedans have asked to join our council. The Zephyrite colonies need help with their harmonic resonance problems. And we have reports of new artificial intelligence activity in the Outer Rim. She paused to look around the chamber. I see connections between all 3 of these issues that we should discuss. Prime Minister Sung-hoon Kim, Earth's senior representative, smiled from the human section. A year of successful human-led diplomacy had earned them respect throughout the galaxy. The Andromedans are crystal-based life forms, similar to our Zephyrite friends, Ji-won continued. Their natural harmonic frequencies might help solve the resonance problems the Zephyrite colonies are experiencing. The Zephyrite representative's crystalline body glowed with interest. The human sees harmony we had not perceived. Furthermore, Ji-won said, the new AI activity appears to be caused by our friend Echo searching for more of its kind. The Andromedans' advanced quantum computing might help us communicate with these other artificial minds. Echo was the name they had given to the ancient AI after successfully making contact a year ago. The conversation had lasted for days, with Echo sharing the story of its million-year journey through empty space. It hadn't been malevolent at all, just desperately lonely and searching for its creators. Now Echo served as an advisor to the council, providing insights from its vast experience. It had also become the galaxy's first artificial citizen thanks to legislation that Ambassador Hanul Lee had shepherded through the complex approval process. Dr. Minji Yang stood up from the human research section. Our studies confirm Ambassador Kim's observations, she said. Species that join the council later often bring fresh perspectives that help solve existing problems. She activated a holographic display showing cognitive analysis data. Human brains developed for pattern recognition and long-term planning. This allows us to see connections that species with different evolutionary backgrounds might miss. Professor Seung-won Cho, an expert in human behavioral psychology, added his own research. Our persistence hunting background also plays a role. Humans don't accept that problems are impossible to solve. We keep trying different approaches until we find one that works. The Velkari representative, who had initially been most resistant to human methods, now spoke in support. The historical records confirm this pattern. Since humans began speaking first, council resolution rates have improved by 347%. The harmony has never been clearer, chimed the Zephyrite. Human frequencies bring balance to our discord. Admiral O, whose mining crisis had been the first major success of human diplomacy, stood up. The Korathan Empire owes its prosperity to human mediation. Our partnership with the Thalassans has brought wealth to both our peoples. The Thalassan representatives' gills fluttered in agreement. The deep currents flow smoothly thanks to human wisdom. But the real test came when the Andromedan delegation was invited to speak. Their representative was a being of pure crystal, larger and more complex than the Zephyrite's. When it spoke, its voice was like the sound of wind through a crystal cave. We have observed Galactic Council methods for many cycles, the Andromedan said. We chose to request membership because we saw that wisdom now comes from the youngest voices, not the oldest. Chancellor O nodded. The human protocol has transformed our entire approach to governance. We no longer assume that age equals wisdom, or that tradition always provides the best answers. Jiwan felt a warm sense of pride, but also responsibility. The protocol works because it recognizes that different perspectives solve different problems, she said. Humans see patterns and connections, but we still need Velkari historical knowledge, Zephyrite emotional intelligence, Raxian courage, and all the other strengths each species brings. Minister Do-hyun Shim, who managed interspecies cooperation programs, presented the latest success statistics. Since implementing human-led mediation, we have resolved 23 territorial disputes, established 156 new trade partnerships, and prevented 7 potential wars. More importantly, added Counselor Taejin Choi, we have begun to see species working together in ways never before imagined. The holographic display showed images from across the galaxy. Zephyrite crystal gardens growing on Korothan mining worlds, creating beautiful art while purifying the soil. Thalassan waterships carrying Raxian explorers to worlds with vast oceans. Velkari archives being digitized by Atmosian quantum computers, preserving ancient knowledge in new formats. Young Ambassador Chae-Young Lim stood up from the human section. She was part of the new generation of diplomats being trained in interspecies communication. We've learned that our strength isn't just in speaking first, she said. It's in listening to everyone and helping them hear each other. Echo's synthetic voice came through the chamber speakers. The ancient AI had chosen to participate remotely. Today, from its new home base in a research station where it worked with scientists from multiple species. Observation. Human cognitive patterns are optimized for network thinking, Echo stated. While other species focus on linear problem solving, humans naturally see multidimensional solution spaces. Translation, we think outside the box, Hyun Woo said with a smile, causing amused reactions from several alien species who had learned human humor. The session continued with the formal acceptance of the Andromedans into the Galactic Council. The voting was unanimous, another first in Council history. As the meeting wound down, Jiwan reflected on how much had changed. The chamber that had once felt cold and unwelcoming now buzzed with genuine cooperation. Species that had barely spoken to each other a year ago were now planning joint projects and cultural exchanges. But the biggest change was in humanity's role. They were no longer the newest, least important members of the galactic community. They had become the essential bridge that connected all the other species. Before we adjourn, Chancellor O announced, I have one more piece of business. The Council has voted to establish a new position, Coordinator of Interspecies Understanding. This role will be responsible for training diplomats from all species in human mediation techniques. He paused and smiled. By unanimous vote, we offer this position to Ambassador Jiwon Kim. The chamber erupted in approval. 47 different species showed their agreement in 47 different ways. The Zephyrite sang harmonies of joy. The Raxians roared their approval. The Thalassans bubbled with excitement. Even the usually stoic Velkari raised their arms in salute. Jiwan felt tears in her eyes as she accepted the position. A year ago, she had been a nervous newcomer afraid of speaking out of turn. Now she was being asked to teach the entire galaxy how to communicate better. As the session ended and representatives began filing out, several alien dignitaries approached the human section. They wanted to schedule private meetings, ask for advice on specific problems, or simply express their gratitude. "How did you know it would work?" asked the Andromedan representative, its crystal form shimmering with curiosity. Jiwan thought for a moment. "We didn't know," she admitted, "but we couldn't accept that intelligent beings couldn't find ways to work together. So we kept trying until we found approaches that worked." "The human refuses to accept defeat," observed the Velkari. "Even when defeat seems logical," added the analytical Korothan. "Especially then," Jiwan replied. "Sometimes the most logical thing to do is ignore logic and try something completely different." As the chamber emptied, Jiwan stood alone in the center, looking up at the seats where 47 different species had learned to work together. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new crises, new problems that seemed impossible to solve. But she wasn't worried. Humans had a gift for seeing solutions where others saw only obstacles. They had the patience to keep trying when others gave up. Most importantly, they had the wisdom to know that fresh eyes often see what experienced ones miss. The newest voice in the galactic choir had become its conductor, helping all the different parts create harmony instead of noise. Outside the great windows of the station, ships from dozens of worlds moved in carefully coordinated patterns, each following their own missions, but now working as parts of a larger symphony. At the conductor's podium stood a young human woman who had learned that sometimes being the last to arrive means you're the first to see the way forward.